So just recently, I reacted to this on stream. Humza Yousaf is now the leader of the Scottish National Party, and therefore the First Minister of the Scottish Parliament. And the right wing definitely not happy about this. First of all, because he's a Muslim and they don't like Muslims in general. It is you don't like him at all for that. But first, secondly, they don't like him because he's the most progressive runner who was in the leadership election, right? They all wanted the social reactionary Kate Forbes to win, and she didn't, because the SNP is largely backed by people of progressive backgrounds, and we have seen from however many of these years of elections in Scotland, they've always been kind of a progressive country. Labour always had a large foothold until the SNP swept to victory in 2015 off the back of Ed Miliband's capitulation to austerity politics, which Scotland roundly rejected, and the SNP have been in power in Scotland ever since. So it makes sense from that perspective that Scotland would continue to back somebody who is a progressive in Parliament. In the form of Humza Yousaf. Now, it was closer than people expected, but the fact that even people of Ash Regan's support, some of them second preference Humza Yousaf, just shows that there was more to this election than just reactionaries versus progressives, for example. But Conservatives are upset with this, and so they've started the smears. They've started the smears already, and this is from a certain Ian McVerter in The Spectator, friend of the show, a publication that is indeed a friend of the show, that has where the smears have started. Humza Yousaf is the Scottish Jeremy Corbyn because, of course, this is the man who is now here's the blueprint for criticisms of the left now. No matter what your positions are, if you're a party of the left now, because they have successfully managed to character assassinate Jeremy Corbyn with lies and smears and mistruths, they can now use him as a proxy to attack the left as a whole. We all told you it would happen. I consistently told everybody that this would happen over and over and over again. Did they listen? Did they fuck? And now we're at this point, we're at this continual surreal nadir where every single person to the left of Blair at this point is just Jeremy Corbyn, and then because he's been discredited through lies, they can do the same thing through osmosis by relating them back to Jeremy Corbyn. It's going to continue. It's going to happen every single time. It really is going to happen every single time. And this is what they're going to. This is how they're trying to describe him. Okay. Perhaps the better comparison is not with Liz Truss, but with Jeremy Corbyn. The Humza ministerial team is what a Corbyn cabinet might have looked like had Jezza won in 2017. Young, red-green, with pronoun-friendly, complete with a minister who describes herself as queer. I mean, like, it's not like there are plenty of people of different sexualities and genders in Parliament at the moment. I mean, the first transgender MP was a Conservative, for example. We have a deputy leader of the House of Commons in the SNP who is already a lesbian. She's a very high-profile lesbian, and of course she's trans-positive, so she's now woke and therefore discredited as far as anybody to the right of the centre is concerned at this point, and definitely anybody who writes in the Spectator. And this is what people would call wokeism on the right now, which is literally anybody who is more progressive than the most reactionary kind of social conservative. I mean, and there's one minister who's non-straight, right? This is the kind of levels of derangement that we get, where just having a non-straight person existing in public is seen as being hyper-progressive at this point. It's the same. Like, we have people writing in The Spectator who have the same opinion towards progressivism as the geeks and gamers channels on YouTube, who get angry if the protagonist in a video game is a woman. That's the level that we're getting at here. That's the level of derangement that you're getting from the right wing about the kind of socially progressive young people, right? Let's not try and sugarcoat this by saying that it's a general attack on progressivism, even though it is obviously partly that, but it's also an attack on young people too. They don't like young people. They don't like our culture. They want to reject our culture. Want to treat us as being completely irrelevant politically, because the more they treat us irrelevant politically, the more they only have to care about the generation of boomers, and both sides are doing this, right? We have a gerontocracy, both in who's in government and also between who the government panders to, because the boomers are a gigantic generational cohort who essentially have the power to choose who wins basically every election in Westminster at this point. So young people's concerns, opinions, and positions are held in complete contempt by everybody in Parliament and in the political and media class at this point, right? We are the easy target because we don't vote, as far as they're concerned. Yousaf's policy agenda is very Labour Manifesto 2017. Public spending, wealth taxes, gender reform, and sustainable energy. I mean, no, that's not Labour's manifesto in 2017. That's just every Labour manifesto. In fact, this was the Conservative manifesto in 2017, gender reform. Theresa May advocated for gender reform in 2017, not Labour. Right? That was a Theresa May policy. Sustainable energy has been a policy of every government for the last 13 years. The Conservatives continually try and sell themselves as some kind of green energy party, even though they're not. They have done some things on changing our energy output, but clearly not enough, hence the energy crisis we're seeing right now. But, Boris Johnson campaigned on public spending. This isn't... The Labour Manifesto 2017 was about renationalisation, right? It was about inclusive ownership. It was about fundamentally changing the economy, rather than just, the third way, which is what public spending what public spending is. Like maybe wealth taxes is like the only kind of social democratic policy here that you could come closer to what Labour 2017. But do you see what I mean? When they will try and take anybody to the left of Blair and conveniently put them into this one massive smorgasbord that is the unelectable far left, even though this is just third way, something resembling kind of soft social democracy. Actually, not even that. This is just social liberalism, right? Which is actually probably that is what Blairite politics was. The third way social liberalism. This isn't social democracy. It's definitely not the socialism or democratic socialism that Jeremy Corbyn champions. So this is a ridiculous comparison. It's absolutely a ridiculous comparison. Slap a couple of wind turbines on it and say that it's fixed. Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of like greenwashing that we got from the Conservative Party. The Guardian columnist Owen Jones, who is of course the worst man in the world according to the Conservative press, penned a guest column in the nationalist tabloid The National, giving Team Humza the Labour left imprimatur. He portrayed Scotland as a land newly liberated from the dark forces of international transphobic neoliberalism. I mean, not liberated as such, because they're still under the heel of the Conservative government, but they consistently always vote against this, right? The idea that somehow neoliberalism is a favoured economic policy of Scotland, or even the UK in general, as we've seen earlier in the stream, all of us back, as a supermajority, back renationalisation of key resources, one of the things that neoliberalism is fundamentally at odds with. So the idea that, it's been liberated until the Conservatives or the Labour Party at this point are out of power is completely nonsensical. But, there's always, regardless of Humza Yousaf being in charge, there's always been a rejection of neoliberalism in Scotland. If Kate Forbes had triumphed, he thundered, it would have been hailed as a victory for social reactionaries across the Western world. And yeah, that's true. Owen Jones is correct, because Kate Forbes is a social reactionary and is against the fundamentally lots of viewpoints that are agreed upon by the United Kingdom, like equal marriage, for example. Yousaf has made student politics into the principle of governance, again, because anything that falls outside the acceptable Overton window of far-right to centre-right neoliberal politics is seen as student politics, right? It's the way they try and delegitimise anyone who disagrees with the overall neoliberal Thatcherite consensus about economic and social policy. That is the way in which they denigrate anybody who disagrees with them. And the left will do this too, by saying anyone who disagrees with them is a fascist, whatever, what have you. Nobody should be doing this. But just because the left do it sometimes doesn't mean that you can also do it about any politics that you disagree with, right? And even then, the idea of nationalisation, which wasn't even part of Humza's manifesto, but is part of Corbyn's manifesto, that's not student politics, that's everyone's politics, because we all agree on it. There should be no truck with capitalists who, as we all know, are responsible for climate chaos, true. Colonialism and slavery, also true. Indeed, business has been cancelled by Humza. That's news to me. There is no longer a dedicated ministerial post of the name now. The former business minister Ivan McKee has now got to join the former finance secretary Kate Forbes on the back benches. They are expected to atone for having the temerity to win votes of nearly half the SNP membership. Well, didn't Kate Forbes reject the posts? Maybe I'm misremembering. Yousaf's knocking out his rivals was very much of the Glasgow University Student Handbook. The Conservative Party don't do this with their political enemies too? Come on, this is nonsense. None of his 28-strong ministerialists come from the Kate or Ash Regan camp's unity is for wimps. I mean, well, why would you have somebody on your front bench who disagrees with your political prescriptions? That makes no sense. Like, you'd want to have people who actually agree with the manifestos that you're elected on, but whatever, I digress. Yeah, he offered Forbes a job and she said no, 100%. Thank you for clarifying that, Jim. Yeah, Forbes was offered a demotion. Well, he even admits it in this article. She was offered a demotion to rural affairs, which she could not accept. Accept? Don't you mean a... Do you not have an editor, Spectator? Do you not know the difference between accept and accept? What? This is a professional paper, and I guess when your editor is Andrew Neil, maybe you let these things slide. Apparently. Anyway, I'm not going to read through the rest of this fucking screed because we all know exactly why they're doing it, that it's just complete nonsense, and it's not indeed a uniquely tartan version of Corbynism, it's just social liberalism, right? It's not social democracy, this is social liberalism. Anyway, there is one other thing. Do we remember what the main thing people were always talking about with regards to Jeremy Corbyn was? Do we remember what theoretically the main problem people had with Jeremy Corbyn outside of his popular economic policies? Oh yeah, it's the big problem with Jeremy Corbyn is that he was an anti-Semite, right? Guess what they're saying about Humza Yousaf? Alarming that the First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, has had meetings with the terrorist organisation Hamas and has campaigned against the Jewish state. At a time of rising anti-Semitism, especially in the UK, we should all be sceptical of those who promote Jew hatred.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
The blueprint is being shown to us. Literally, we have the blueprint being used again and again and again. And it is uniquely toxic that they are now doing this specifically towards Muslims. And this isn't the first time that they've done it either. When Sadiq Khan was running for mayor, these same things happened. These same things were being said by places like Haaretz or whatever it was, right? They used exactly the same criticisms of perceived anti-Semitic comments or anti-Semitic things done or being said by Muslims going into power within the Labour Party that they did to Jeremy Corbyn for all of his tenure as leader, and what they're doing to Humza Yousaf now. It's so fucking cynical. Never saw this coming at all. Here we go again. Literally, shit, here we go again, is what we're getting now. Do they provide any source? Let us find out. I've not read this article, Imagination Scene, so should be good. It should be interesting to find out what's going on here. Let me have a look. He also has a history of meeting with Hamas and has called for an arms embargo against the state of Israel. Yousaf has said in the past that people are starving and dying a slow death in the Gaza Strip. I mean, that's just a fact. Yeah, we should stop arms sales to a genocidal apartheid state. And the idea that people in the largest open-air prison in the world are starving and dying a slow death is just 100% true. Okay. Humza Yousaf arranged the high-level meeting with Mohammed Sawala, whose nom de guerre is Abu Abada. Let me find this. Right. Yousaf was working as a parliamentary assistant for Scotland's first Muslim Scottish Member of Parliament, Bashir Ahmad. At the same time, Yousaf, along with his cousin Osama Saeed, was running the Scottish Islamic Foundation. The Wallace history was public knowledge, the Jewish news site reported. The BBC in 2006 identified him as having masterminded much of Hamas's political and military strategy. The Jewish Chronicle queried Yousaf about his meeting and whether he knew about Sawala's background. Yousaf didn't respond to the question, saying he had only had a strong track record of standing up against every form of hatred, including anti-Semitism. Yousaf has urged Palestine to be recognised as an independent state and has called for an arms embargo against Israel. So, they don't actually have any evidence of any of this stuff. And I then use that as a Trojan horse to smuggle in criticism of his pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian policy. It's interesting how this always comes alongside each other. They can't just ever criticize somebody for theoretical perceived anti-Semitism. It always has to come along at the same time as also look at these things they said about Palestine. Oh, look how bad Palestine is, right? For example, rather than to try and smuggle in the idea that being pro-Palestine is somehow inherently anti-Semitic by trying to equate it with other perceived instances of anti-Semitic behaviour outside of discussion of the Israel-Palestine discussion. Armed resistance to occupation is legal under international law. Western leftists who support arming Ukraine are hypocrites unless they support arming Palestinians too. 100%. And I have not been shy on this channel of saying that I agree with arming Ukraine and I agree with arming Palestinians. Simple as that. The state of Israel and the state of Russia and what they're doing to Ukraine and Palestine are literally fundamentally identical. It's the same kind of manifest destiny bullshit and right of return style stuff, that they are literally doing identical things about what they've perceived to be a cultural and ethnic claim to a piece of land. That's it. It's identical what's being done from Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Palestine. Simple, 100% simple. I don't support Hamas because their open goal is to remove all Jews. 100%, I agree. We should always critique Hamas for their anti-Semitism. 100%. You got to remember, Hamas was created by the Israeli government and funded by the Israeli government to try and manufacture consent amongst the Jewish population of Israel against Palestine specifically by funding the anti-Semitic forces to control these areas to then essentially turn it into a race war rather than a discussion that we have around people's right to self-determination and their right to maintaining their own homeland and the right of return of people who've been expelled from the places they were living before the colonization of the 1940s. Simple as that. Palestinians can be Jewish, true, very true. 100%. You're absolutely right that we shouldn't be demanding only Palestinians be allowed to exist there. The whole point is that there should be a single, multi-ethnic, multi-religious Palestinian state. That's it, right? The single state solution is the correct solution. It may not be the one that's going to happen. It may not be the most pragmatic solution. But if you want the correct solution, it is to create a single Palestinian state where both Arabs and Jewish people can both live. 100%. That is it. That's the correct answer to this question. But there was one time where, as a parliamentary assistant, he arranged a meeting with somebody from Hamas. He didn't meet with them himself. He arranged the meeting for somebody else. That is literally the only thing that they have to try and skewer him as being anti-Semitic. But this is it, right? Anybody, doesn't matter what position that you take or where you are on the political spectrum, if you show support for Palestinians, you will now be smeared as an anti-Semite. The blueprint has been tried, it's been tested, it's been successful, and they will apply it to everybody who A, supports Palestine and is B, too left-wing. So there we go. It's nice to see this is fundamentally why the campaigns to exonerate Jeremy Corbyn as leftists is not something that we shouldn't be doing. I understand why people keep saying we need to move on from Jeremy Corbyn. I 100% agree. He shouldn't be we don't need a Jeremy Corbyn party. We don't need him to try and run as Prime Minister again. He should run to be an independent in Islington North. That's what we should be doing with Jeremy Corbyn, right? That's fine. What we shouldn't be doing is allowing smears, misinformation, half-truths, all this complete nonsense to be used as a general smear to attack the left more broadly because we refuse to defend Jeremy Corbyn on these things. We need to exonerate this man because the lies are not okay, and the ways in which they are trying to use this as a proxy to attack the entire left as a whole is unconscionable and has to be fought back against because they'll continue to do it. They're doing it to Yousaf now. They did it to when people from Labour Party joined the Green Party by saying that the Green Party was now the home of the anti-Semites who'd left the Labour Party. They're going to continue to do this, and it won't stop until all left-wing politics has been tarred with this brush, and all support for Palestine has been tarred with this brush as well. And is going to continue, and it will reach fever pitch eventually, and so we have to fight back against it.